So we were talking, Raptois Gimel, and we were talking about uh, the idea of going into Eretz Yisrael. And before you go into Eretz Yisrael, you need to go through a covenant. So the Rebbe is going to explain now the various different levels of going into Eretz Yisrael. We have everything starts with Torah, so we have going into Eretz Yisrael the way it's in the Torah. And we also have Eretz Yisrael going into Eretz Yisrael in and by the soul by the year for Rosh Hashanah. This is all going to be understood. The idea of a krisus bris means a covenant from a higher place in order to connect. The going into Eretz Yisrael means going down. When the Eden went out from the desert into Eretz Yisrael, they went down into practical, into the world of action versus the world of machshava. So to go down from these extremes to connect, you need to start from a higher place, from a deeper root. Well, let's look inside. Ois Gimel. So first the Rebbe says, "Ulahovin kol zeh," to understand all this, the going into Eretz Yisrael, the covenant of going to Eretz Yisrael. Hine Yadua, it is, behold, it is known, the Chol Ha'inyonim Sheba'olam Mekoidem Hu B'Torah. All matters in the world is sourced in Torah. So whatever happens and whatever we learn about and whatever we see, uh, it starts with Torah. There is the concept the way it is in Torah. V'chein hu be'inyan Eretz Yisrael, and the same thing is with this idea of Eretz Yisrael, v'aknisel Eretz Yisrael, and going into Eretz Yisrael. Sheyesh bechinas zu b'Torah. We have this level in Torah. Torah has a level in which we go into Eretz Yisrael. Basically, when we take the Torah Shabiksav, the written Torah, and we expound it in the Torah Shabbal Peh, that is considered going into Eretz Yisrael, going into the learning it the way it's in the oral Torah and the Torah Shabbal Peh. That means going into Eretz Yisrael. Why? Because once you come to the Torah Shabbal Peh, you get the practical halacha, what you need to do. When it is in the Torah, we don't know exactly. Yes, everything is hinted in the Torah, but from the Torah itself, you can't pass on a halacha. You don't know Maisa what to do b'poil. There could be different opinions and could be different interpretation. Only when we have the level of Torah Shabbal Peh, you have the Gemara and the halacha, that you can then know what you can practically do. That is what's called Eretz Yisrael. As the Alter Rebbe explains at length, in the beginning of the Torah Shom, and previously mentioned Likutei Torah, the Eretz Yisrael, he bechinas Torah Shabbal Peh. The level of Eretz Yisrael is the oral Torah, the Torah Shabbal Peh. That's considered Eretz Yisrael. Why? What is the connection to Eretz Yisrael with Torah Shabbal Peh? The word Eretz Yisrael, comes from the Lashon, Rebbe mentioned earlier also, that Eretz comes from the Lashon of Rotzon. That it says, it brought down in the Medrash, that why is it called Eretz? Why is it called Eretz? Eretz is called because of the Rotzon, because it wanted to do what Hashem wanted. That's why it's called Eretz from Lashon Rotzon. So basically, Eretz Yisrael means the Rotzon of Hashem. Since the Rotzon of Hashem is to do the mitzvahs, and where do we know how to do the mitzvahs? We know it from the oral Torah. That's why the Eretz Yisrael, the Rotzon of Yisrael, which is the Rotzon to do the will of Hashem, is the level of Torah Shabbal Peh, as the Rebbe explains now. Ki Eretz uloshin rotzon umerutza. The word Eretz comes from the language, both, as quoted before, running, a will and running and the wind, running to do the will of Hashem. Kimuva b'teres of Hashem Tov, as brought down in the previous Torah of Hashem Tov. V'hoyo kisavoy el ha'aretz, kisavoy el ha'aretz. You come to the running, you come to the will of Hashem. Asher Hashem l'kecha noisem, but we learned before it's a matana. We have that level of rotzin in ourselves that the Eibishter gave us as a gift. And also, like we say in the Medrash, Lama Nikra Shmo Eretz. Why was she called Eretz? And this is talking about B'chlal Eretz. Eretz v'shamoyim sherotzes olasis ritzoin koino. For she wanted to do what Hashem wanted. That is the level, that's the lotion of Eretz. So v'gilui rotzin ha'elyon hu al yidei Torah Shabbal Peh Davke. Where do we have the revealed wishes, what Hashem wants? That comes through the oral Torah Davke. So where do you have rotzin? That's why the Torah Shabbal Peh is called Eretz. Eretz Yisrael, but it's Eretz. Why? The bichdei lekayim es rotzin ha'elyon, in order to fulfill what the Eibishter wants, the wishes, the rotzin of the Supreme of Hashem. Einay maspik halimud b'Torah shebiksav. It is not sufficient learning in the written Torah. You can't just learn Torah shebiksav. If you learn Torah shebiksav, you still don't know what to do, what the halacha is. You need to learn also Torah Shabbal Peh. Now, everything comes from Torah shebiksav, from the written Torah. Although there is nothing which is not hinted in the Torah, which means everything comes from the Torah, has a hint in the Torah. So that's true, that everything is hinted in the Torah, but it's only a hint. The remes bilvat, that is only a hint. There is possible from this hint, there could be two opinions. As we say, the elu ve'elu divrei elikim chayim, both these and these, both opinions, are the words of the living God. So we don't have a clear directive what to do from the Torah shebiksav. Davke al yidei halocha hapsuk upsuka, and davke through the clear ruling of the halacha, upsak din borer, very clear decision of what the law is, b'Torah Shabbal Peh, which is in the oral Torah. Efsher lodas ulekayim esarotzon ha'elyon. That's the way we know. It's possible to know and to fulfill what the Eibishter wants. We need Torah Shabbal Peh. That's why that is the rotzin, and that's why the Torah Shabbal Peh is considered the Eretz Yisrael of Torah. So now we're going to understand, in order to bring down into the practical, into the rotzin ha'elyon, which comes from the highest place, into the practical, we need a krisus bris, we need a connection from even a higher place than Torah shebiksav to connect the highest level into Maisa, Dalet. So with this, we can understand what's the idea of forming this covenant before going into Eretz Yisrael. Now we know in Torah, Eretz Yisrael, before you can bring it down into halacha l'maisa, we need to go through a forming of a covenant. Shehi Torah Shabbal Peh, that's Torah Shabbal Peh. Kihine inyan Torah Shabbal Peh, for the idea of Torah Shabbal Peh, of the oral Torah, hu chibur hamayla mayla im hamata mata. that is connecting, which is higher and higher, which is above higher, with what is below lower, which is mata mata, milo with mata mata. Why is there such an extreme over here? The halacha, the law comes mekoira, that comes merotzin ha'elyon. That comes from the supreme will, that comes from the level of rotzin. The level of rotzin shalamayla mailo mibchinas chokhmah. The will, Hashem's will, is higher and higher than the level of chokhmah. So in Torah bepashtus is the level of chokhmah. That's the level of Hashem's wisdom, is the Torah. But the level of rotzin is higher than the Torah. And that's, as it's interpreted, v'hi b'chinas v'havaye imoy shalalocha kemoise. We say that Hashem is with him, and that's in Shmuel Aleph to Zayin Yud Ches, which means over there that the Eibishter's always halacha becomes like him, which means that it comes from the Shem Havaya. It comes from the Shem Havaya, Havaya Imay Shalocha Kemoisei, and that is higher than the level of Chokhmah. It's actually even higher than the level which is higher than Chokhmah. Shalamayla loy rak mibchinas elikim. Halacha comes from Havaya. Havaya is not just higher mibchinas elikim from the level of elikim. So you say Havaya elikim, Havaya is greater, but it's more than that. Elagam, but it's also greater. It's more than just elikim, but even than the level we say elu ve'elu divre elikim chayim. Sometimes when you have a machloikis between two opinions, so we say even though the halacha is like one, but they're both words of elikim chayim. Elikim chayim is higher than the level of elikim. The elikim chayim hu b'chinas habina. That's the level of bina. Kimevur bedrusha kvet kedush admor tzamach tzedek, as explained in the Maimorim of the Rebbe the Tzamach Tzedek v'chak admur Maharash, and the Maimorim of the Rebbe Maharash, v'anisim shel achareim, and the leaders, the Rebbes that followed the Tzamach Tzedek Maharash, memali mekoimom, who filled their places. Hamevarim inyan elikim chayim, who explain elikim chayim. But nevertheless, we're saying that the level of Avaya Imoy, level of Rotzen, is higher than Elikim, higher than Divr Elikim Chayim, as explained, the level of Bina, whatever the level, but it's at a higher level. So where does Halacha come from? Halacha comes from a very high place, higher than Chochmah, which is Torah B'Pashtus, higher than Elikim Chayim. And then you take that Halacha, which comes from such a high place, and from there, it extends in the ruling, the Maisa, what to do, so in this world. So you're taking it from all the ways, Shem Havaya, higher than Havaya, and you're bringing it in practically how one needs to conduct himself in this physical world. As the Alter Rebbe explains in Igeres HaKodesh, Hamoshul Likiyum HaMitzvahs. He gives the example for the fulfillment of mitzvahs. The mitzvahs, he says, when we feel is Ke'amud HaMechaber Es Hagag Im Haritzbo. He gives the example, like you have a post, a pillar. The pillar connects the floor with the roof. The roof is sitting on the pillar, and the pillar is sitting on the floor. So therefore, that connects the floor to the roof. The mitzvahs are the pillars which connect Havaya with the floor, with Olam Hazeh. And the language, using the language in Kabbalah and Chassidus, Chibur Sovev Kol Almim Umemala Kol Almim. The roof, that's the Sovev Kol Almim. That's the Shem Havaya. Umemala Kol Almim, that fills the world. That's Olam Hazeh. That's the Maisa. So we're connecting the Sovev and Memala, connecting the roof with the floor. So how do we do that? So v'yodua shebishvil chibur zeh tzorich liyas hamshocha mimokim shelamayla mishneim. So in order to connect the sovev with the memale, you need to get a place which is higher than sovev and memale. V'zohu inyan habris. That's the level of the bris. The idea of the covenant is to be mamshich from a higher place, which is higher than both. So the Rebbe is explaining, what's the idea in Torah? What's the idea of Krisus Bris? Since the level of Torah, the level of Eretz Yisrael is the level of Torah Shabbal Peh. So you have to connect now the highest level, because Torah Shabbal Peh is Halacha L'Maisa. So that's the Halacha L'Maisa. Halacha L'Maisa doesn't come from Torah Shebiksav. That comes from Torah Shabbal Peh. Halacha L'Maisa really means that you're taking from the highest place, because we say it's more than Chokhmah, it's the level of Rotzen. So you have to take from the level of Havaya, and you have to bring it down into Maisa. And before you can bring down from Havaya to Maisa, you need from a higher place, which is the level of Bris. So before you go in from the Rotzen Elyon into the Maisa in Olam Hazeh, you need an infusion from a place which is higher. That's the idea of Krisus Bris. So what does this Krisus Bris do for the person in his soul? What does it mean by the person? Hashem is making a covenant. How does it interpret by the person? That the person gets in his soul, from a deeper level of his soul, more than even the usual connection from the soul. That is the Krisus Bris, that it touches the person in his soul. This we can understand. What does it mean, the covenant in the level of the soul? The keshem she'inyan habris kipshutei. What is a covenant? A covenant means that you're making an agreement. You're coming to a decision that no matter what happens, you're still going to remain connected. As the Rebbe brought down before, we know that they want to make sure that their connection will be a lasting connection. So even if there's going to be things in between them, they're still going to stay connected and not going to allow for that to break the connection. That means connect. When you connect, it means you become like one. If you're one, you can't break up what's one, because became one. It's not like two separate things connected. They became like one. So that brings in from a deeper level of the soul. The kishem she'inyan habris kipshute. Just like literally, what is the idea of a covenant? You draw down from an idea which is beyond reason, because you're making the covenant that even if you change your mind, that where reason doesn't work there, it's a connection which is above reason. The lachein ein shayich b'shum shinui klal. That's why there's no change at all. V'chein yokum, and this is the way it stays all the time. The al yidei zeh ma'achdim hafochim. That way you can connect opposite. Logically, it doesn't make sense, but yet you're connecting higher than logic. As the Likutei Torah explains, that the fact that they go through in between the pieces, nasim la'achodim ke'echad mamish, they become united like one. They're actually one. So you can't break it apart because you turned it into one. It's no longer two connected, but one. So that's why it stays. Al derech zeh human being in akrisis bris ben nefesh. So this is similar to understand what is the krisis bris, what it does in the soul. Shebishvil ichud hasosim vegalya shebenefesh. In order to unite the hidden and the revealed of the soul, tzarich liyas inyan habris. So here we need a covenant. Shehu hamshocha mimokim elyen b'yosef benefesh, which comes from a very high place in the soul. Al derech hanal b'Torah, just like before by Torah we said that it comes from a higher place, even than Havaya Imay, from a very high place, to connect the two levels that they should become one. That's the bris. The bris, what it does to the person in his soul, he connects the most highest level of his soul and brings it, reveals that, and that brings about the connection of the hidden part of the soul and the revealed part of the soul. So we explained what it means, the covenant, before going into Eretz Yisrael in Torah. And we explained what the covenant means in the person's soul. And now we're going to explain what is the covenant when you actually went into Eretz Yisrael, that la'avrecha b'vris that took place in the parsha, Vav. V'zeu gami in akrisis bris b'vchinas oilom shel lifnei haknisa l'eretz kipshutei. That is the forming of the covenant in the world, which is literally before entering Eretz Yisrael, literally. Kisova yala'oretz goimer v'yorashta v'yashafta, but when you come to the land, you inherit it and you settle it. The same thing is you needed to have that la'avrecha bivris. Because what happened is the Yidden came from the desert, Olam HaMachshava, they're going into Eretz Yisrael, Olam HaMaisa. In order to be able to make that transition, they needed to have that extra covenant from a higher place. The Hine Mevuer Bekama Mekoimes is explained in many places. She'inyan HaKnisa LaEretz Yisrael. What is the idea of entering Eretz Yisrael? Hoya HaYerida Me'olam HaMachshava. That was a descent from the world of thought, or from the world of speech, to the world of action. In the desert, in the midbar, the Yidden were like in the world of machshava. They didn't have any literal occupation in them, or it was like level of dibur. When they come to Eretz Yisrael, that's the world of action. Yerida lamata mata, they descended low, le'eretz echeles yishvel, to a level where a land that consumes its inhabitants. Kivon shahoya tzarich liyos hachibur the mailo mamato. So since there was a necessity now to connect the higher and higher, the world of machshava, into the world of Maisa, from the midbar into Eretz Yisrael, lochein hoya tzarich liyos lifnei zeh Krisus bris meyuchedes. That's why they needed a special covenant now. Levada bris ashikoras itom b'choyrev, as the pasuk said. This is besides, in addition to the covenant that Hashem formed with them in choyrev by Matan Torah. Because kigam achrei habris shebechoyrev hoyu adayin dordeyo. Because even after that covenant in the midbar, the Jews were still a generation of knowledge while they were in the desert. So that covenant didn't bring them down to Maisa. It was still Bechinas Machshava, Bechinas Dibur. The various explanation, either they were still in the level of thought or in the level of Dibur. And now we need to go into Eretz Yisrael into Maisa, Mashenkin Khan. But now here, when you're coming to Eretz Yisrael, now you got to bring the descent very low into Eretz Yisrael. Ad shepalu, until you impacted shetiyah toiva haaretz ma'od ma'od, that the land should be good, very, very good. Hine lozeo yotzarich liyes krisus bris miyuchedes. This required a special covenant to bring down from the world of machshava into the world of Maisa, into Eretz Yisrael. It's a major descent. The covenant before, but the Yidden still remained in the Midbar. Well, they had the Midbar Sinai, and for those time they were in Midbar, they were still in the world of Machshav and Dibur. Before you can come down to the level of Maisa, you need to have from a higher place. That's the idea of Krisus Bris, that special Krisus Bris. And now the Rebbe turns this back to Eretz, to the year, to Rosh Hashanah. We have a Krisus Bris, because on Rosh Hashanah really we start all the level of the whole year, all the Avodah, and therefore we need to have a special covenant to bring all this down in practice for the year. Zayin. V'hinei kishem sheyesh inyan hakrisus bris b'nefesh u'ba'olam, just as we have the forming of the covenant. In the person's soul, we said it comes from a higher, deeper place of the neshama. U'ba'olam, and in the world, we say that we're getting before going into Eretz Yisrael. Kain Hugam B'Shana, likewise, it's also the year when you go into Eretz Yisrael during the year. The Berosh Hashanah B'chinas Kniso LeEretz Yisrael B'Shana. On Rosh Hashanah, you're going into Eretz Yisrael. That's the going into Eretz Yisrael during the year. U'Bechol Shana Koydem Rosh Hashanah. Every year before Rosh Hashanah, Tzorich Krisus Bris Mechodesh. We need a new covenant. Every year we're going to Eretz Yisrael, when we're going into Rosh Hashanah, La'avrucha Bivris, we need a covenant from Hashem. The idea is, the Hine Berosh Hashanah Hu Shleimus Avodas Ha'odam. And Rosh Hashanah is the wholesomeness, that's when the work of man is in its complete state. The Oz HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omer, when the person's service is in its complete state, Hashem says, Tamli chuni aleichem, make me king over you. On the Rosh Hashanah, the Eibusher says, make me a king, because the Yidden are in the fullest avodah. The ha'achlota al briyas ha'olam, because why the decision for Hashem to create the world, as brought down in the Medrash, Hi alidei neshamas Yisrael. We have a big part in Hashem's becoming a king and creating the world, because the Eibishter consulted U'Kumaimer, as it's saying, the Jewish souls, b'minim lach b'nishmeseim shel tzadikim. Hashem consulted the souls of the tzadikim, v'amich kulam tzadikim. Not only tzadikim means by all people, neshamas, all neshamas Yisrael, convinced Hashem to create the world, as explained on length in the teaching of the Magid Ner Torah. So there is explained through the fact that it went up before Hashem, the pleasure that He will have from the service of the tzaddikim, chulu. That means that He consulted. That means He realized, appreciated the joy that the tzaddikim will bring Him. And it gives an example, as so example, a father who imagines to himself his small child. So the Eibishter was looking and imagining what the Yidden, the Neshamas, will do. So this was the beginning of the creation. But the same thing happens every Rosh Hashanah. The Hamlocha Hi Alidei Yisrael Davke. Who causes Hashem to bring the king? Hamlocha, making Hashem the king, that takes place through the Yidden. The Yidden make Hashem the king. So first it becomes the king of the Yidden. Tamlichuni Aleichem. through becoming the king of the Yidden, he achlot liyes melech al kol ha'olam. Then Hashem gets the decision to be king over the whole world. U'me'achlota shebereish hashana nimshach l'chol yemei hashana. And from this decision that the Eibishter makes on Rosh Hashanah that he wants to be a king, that extends to the entire year. And that's why the Loche Nikra Rosh Hashanah. That's why it's called the head of the year, because it's that decision that impacts every day of the year. And it's not the beginning. As explained at length in Ateres Rosh, in the beginning, how this is Rosh Hashanah. So that is the similar to a head which includes all the limbs. Not only in the beginning, even after the limbs. Each limb is in its place. The head continues to lead them. The Cain who Rosh Hashanah. The same thing is Rosh Hashanah. Shehu Hamanhig Eskol Yemois Hashanah. He leads, Rosh Hashanah leads all the days of the year. Ve'ad shenimshach b'maise b'poyel, until it extends into actual action. That everything of Rosh Hashanah, whatever is on Rosh Hashanah, that leads everything that a person does and goes throughout, happens throughout the year. Shezeu inyan hamshacha min hakotze lakotze. So this is coming from the level of Hashem to decide become the king and want the world and become the melech, till actual Maaseh B'Poel leading in day-to-day life and Rosh Hashanah, that all takes place on Rosh Hashanah. That's from one extreme to the other extreme. So, because the whole idea, the Eibishter making a decision, is in itself already higher than the world. So, v'gam klolus inyan ha'achlota, the general, the Eibishter is making a decision, liyis melech, to become a king, nimshach al yidei hachtoras neshamas Yisrael. That comes through the fact that the Yidden's souls, they crown Hashem and they make Hashem king. Shehem atzmom, so the neshamas themselves, shorsham l'mayla afilu meTorah. Their root of the neshamas comes higher than the root of Torah. And they are the one that make the decision to create, to become king. Umisham nimshach lemata, and from all the ways, the level of neshamas Yisrael, which are higher than Torah, it extends below. Davke al yidei psak din beTorah, and specifically through the ruling of the Torah. All the ways, because that is, well, the tzaddikim, that's what they do, and that gives the Eibishter the pleasure, and that's why the Eibishter becomes the king. And by what? By the Yidden ruling in the Torah. That is the Torah's instructions as it impacts actual action. So from the Hachlote, from the Neshamas Yisrael, higher than Torah, to bring down into Maaseh B'Poel. And Asher Kidei Love Lipsak Din Amiti, in order to come and reach a true halacha in Maaseh, Tzorich Siageya, you have to put in a lot of effort Kidei Lahavoi El Ha'emes La'amitoi. In order to come to the truth, to know the ruling, you have to work very hard to bring it down to come to a real ruling. So that means that it comes down into, you have to work hard, it has to come to very low into the Maaseh. כמבואר בהמשך יום טוב של ראש השנה שחל ליאס בשבס, as explained in the Hemshech of Rosh Hashanah Shechaylis Mishabes Mechveit Kedush Sadmur Nishmos Eden of the Rebbe Rashab Ubedrushe Chak Kedushos Merichom Admur Nisidareinu Mav Mekeme, and the Maimorim from the Friedrich Rebbe who filled the place of the Rebbe Rashab. So you have to bring it down from the Achlota of Hashem to become a king to the Psak Din that we actually fulfilled the Eibishter's will. In Yekolzehu Amshocha Min HaKotz Achil Elyon. So that's bringing down from the extreme, the most supreme end, El HaKotz Achitachtin, to the lowest level. That's why before Rosh Hashanah, when we're going to bring down from the highest level to the lowest level, we need to have a special covenant formed specifically. That's le'ovrecha. Shalidei hakrisis bris, through that forming of the covenant, nasim kol bnei Yisrael, ba'amich kulam tzadikim, all Jewish people become, all tzadikim chad im atzmus mahus, they become one with the essence and the mahus of Hashem. That's the bris that takes place before Rosh Hashanah. The dugmas habris kipshuti begashmi, similar to the covenant, literally, physically, to become one with atzmus and mahus. I don't think the Rebbe is talking about the bris that takes place in the flesh. The Rebbe is talking about literally covenant that people make, which touches them l'mayla mitam badas. I don't know, maybe the word bris kipshutei means a connection with the atzmus because the Eibishter connects with your physical body. I'm not sure if this means the bris kipshutei over here or not, or it means just literally a bris. Ches, ma'akrisus bris bechlolus, and from this general covenant that we form, nimshoches hachlotes toives, this extend the good decisions, b'negeya lilimud haTorah, as it pertains, connects to the study of Torah, v'kiyum hamitzvos, and the observance of mitzvahs, v'avodas hatfilah, and the serving of davening. Al yidei zeh Yisrael v'kudsha bricha uluchat. Then we become one, the Yidden with Hashem. Umizeh bo, and from this comes a ksiva v'chasima toiva l'shona toiva mesucha. V'haschaloso lifnei zeh, and it also starts beforehand, because this is still in Chai Elul that the Rebbe gave this maimer, b'chodesh ha'achona, during the month of preparation, u'chodesh Elul, which is the month of Elul, shu Rashi Tevis, ani l'doidi v'doidi li. So that's the connection with Hashem. I am to my beloved to me b'frat. Mechai Elul, especially from the 18th of Elul, shu yoim haledes shnei ha'ma'odes ha'gedolim, which is the birthday of the two great luminaries. Sha'os mazolam goiver, on a birthday, their luck, their mazel is strengthened. So there's a special power to these true great luminaries, to the Alter Rebbe and the Baal Shem Tov. And what was their purpose and what was their intent, the goal? That they should spread the well springs to the outside, to such an outside which there is nothing further outside. It's the extreme outside. And through this, my master, so when will Mar come, which is the Malka Beshicha, Bekoriv Mamesh, the Bagola Didan. Okay, good. I hope, is it clear? It's pretty clear, no?
Yeah, Baruch Hashem.
Okay. See you soon.
Baruch Hashem.
Okay, it's working well. Good.
Bye-bye.